Hello, everyone. So, we are starting a second session of the Cracking the Data Science interview series, and I have my special guest again, Nick Singh. In the previous session that we had, we really got overwhelming responses, and unfortunately, because of the amount of questions we were having on the chat, we could not cover the technical aspects of things. So, we thought of doing another session where we can only focus on the technical aspects and we can dig really deep into, say, probability, stats, SQL questions, etc. So thank you so much, Nick, for agreeing on joining us again on Tracking the Data Science interview. And for those who might probably be joining us for this session for the first time or might not be following on LinkedIn, could you just give them a quick introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back on. So my name is Nick Singh. Some of you guys follow me on LinkedIn, and if you don't, go fix that. No, just kidding. It's not that aggressive. But yeah, so I'm a career coach these days, and I talk a lot about how to ace the interview. But who am I and what's my background? So in school, I studied systems engineering, which is a mix of kind of computer science, applied math, business. I've interned at Google, and then I worked full time at Facebook on the growth team, where there's a lot of A/B testing and data driven experimentation going on. And um, last week's session was, I guess, 2 weeks ago, was so much
Yeah.
fun talking about portfolio projects and behavioral interviews. I'll link that link there. But you know what we didn't talk about? The actual meat of the data science interview. I didn't talk about the actual acing the data science interview. We talked about everything else besides like, yo, how do we actually do these interview questions? So I'm really glad we get to like be back on and like actually talk through some of these tips that I have for you all.
Absolutely. So, Nick, could you give us like a quick overview on what are you going to cover today in the technical aspects?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're just going to talk about the different roles in data science and what those interview questions look like, and then how to best answer them. Now, guys, I want to be straight up with you. This is not going to be something like you listen to this 1 hour thing and like now you know how to pass these like leak code coding questions or now you know ML. Like, today is more about how do we approach these problems and like what should we study. I'm not actually going to tell you guys, hey, here's like I'm not teaching you machine learning, right? Like that's on you guys. But I think there is a strategy to how we study, and like knowing what to expect on these job interviews will really impact the way we learn and study and like prioritize our material. So that's kind of what I want to cover today. Like, what do these interviews cover and how do we best prepare for them? And guys, I'm not going to be so pluggy and just be like, oh, just buy my book. That's the way. Like, we're going to keep it just open too. Like, I'm going to talk about other ways we can prepare and like just generally how can we just do better even if you don't have access to my book, because I know a lot of you guys are in India or in other countries where the book's not available, so I'm working really hard to make that available. But hopefully today's talk today will still leave you with enough things to actually approach these technical interviews better and like start solving them. So when the book comes out in your place, or if you haven't gotten the book yet, that's we'll work on that. But even then, I think that's what we're going to cover today. Just a lot about the
Yeah.
technical portions of the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nick, when we talk about data science roles, right? Like, first of all, it's very vast space. Like, data science is not just like, one kind of role, like software engineering. It has like data scientist role, which is maybe more towards research or data analyst or machine learning engineer, etc. So, these different roles at organizations require different kind of technical acumen tested, right? So how do the technical rounds look different between these different roles?
Absolutely. So it's crazy, right? What one company calls a data scientist, another company
Yeah.
might call a machine learning engineer or data analyst. So I'm going to tell you roughly some patterns, but like, guys, what, because there's so much diversity in the field of data, it's hard to give like one size fits all answers. And then also what's expected at smaller stage companies is different than what's expected at FANG, which is different than what's expected at Fortune 500 companies. Okay. So just generally what's covered: probability, statistics, coding, SQL, machine learning, product science, and case interviews.
Mhm.
Easy enough, right?
Yeah.
No, that's like 11 things. Holy shit. That's so much, right? And guys, I know that's overwhelming. Aisha's a genius. That's why she was like, oh yeah, that's it. Like, that's easy. No, guys, for the rest of us who are not Aishwarya, like, That's a lot of freaking things to study.
No, just the table of contents is easy.
Yeah. Knowing the table, yeah. Actually, at least in these interviews and like
Knowing the table
knowing
is
your
easy.
memo, yeah, that shit's
Yeah.
hard. But let's break it down a little bit because like not every one person needs to be an expert in every single thing, right? So if
Mhm.
you're like a data analyst, right? Like sorry, most of these roles you're gonna be expected to know some basic probability. And I think some people have talked about like, hey, what are these probability brain teasers? So if you guys want to follow me, every Monday I post like a interview question, and they often end up being kind of these probability or statistics brain
Yeah.
teaser types as a LinkedIn poll, just because I can't ask like an open-ended question like that. So um, guys, it's not always about probability brain teasers. I think one thing that I want to let people know is some of these companies, especially on Wall Street or FANG, may ask these
Mhm.
very tough combinatorics or permutations, combinations type problems, but
Yeah.
often it's about the core concepts of probability and statistics. Do you know about the central limit theorem? Do you do you know how to run a hypothesis test? Do you understand what like a confidence interval is or a p-score? Like what does it actually mean? You know? And I think one thing I want to like let people know is yeah, there are some brain teasers that are asked, but another really, really popular form of question that's asked is explain like I'm five, or explain like I'm not technical. What is a confidence interval? Or um, explain the central limit theorem to somebody who's not technical. And here's the reason why. Our field is so interdisciplinary and we have to work with so many different stakeholders
Mhm.
that being able to just explain technical things in non-technical terms is such a huge part of the job. So it's like it's not about having maybe the most advanced modeling skills. Sometimes it's about just being able to communicate and convey
Yeah.
ideas, and make sure you understand the foundation. So I think that's what's often seen in probability and statistics questions, and that's kind of in all the roles. Um,
Okay.
Something else I wanted to mention was I think we had talked about this before, even a little bit on the last time, but I want to like bring it up again. All roles, doesn't matter which role you're interviewing for, they're going to ask you about project walkthrough questions, and that's basically where you're asked to explain, like, hey, like I saw this project or like your last job, you built this model, like you used logistic regression. Why? How did you validate its assumptions? How did you measure its performance? How did you make sure the model didn't overfit?
Yeah.
So I think last week, and if you guys can see the link for last week, let me just put that link in right now, real quick. Um, Go watch last week's thing about how to be building portfolio projects and
Yeah.
experiences. I just chatted it down there, but
Yeah.
that's kind of something that's going to be asked everywhere. And I just want to call that back out because some people think like that's not technical. That's just them asking you about your experience, but often that's like a jumping off point
Yeah.
for more technical questions.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
before I even like break down all these different subtypes of questions for each of the different roles, I just want to like call it out that you're definitely going to be asked about your project.
Yeah.
And often that might start going technical. It might not actually be like this, oh, tell me about the teamwork for your project. No, they might actually ask you about overfitting and like how do you prevent overfitting? Tell me about L1 versus L2 regularization. Like it's
Yeah.
just like that's how it goes. I wouldn't
Yeah.
say
Makes
downhill,
sense.
but downhill into the technical, maybe uphill if you're more into that stuff, who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the meanwhile, like if people can also like put in their areas of expertise, right? Like what kind of roles are you trying to interview
Yeah.
for?
Yeah,
So
I
that'll
know
be great. Like that'll give us a better perspective on like what's the demographic of people applying for different roles.
absolutely. Yeah, let's just take a second. I see there's like
Yeah,
143 people. Maybe y'all, if you guys are enjoying what we're talking about so far, just hit this stream with a like and let me know where you're calling in from. I'm in New York City right now. Aish, you're in San
I'm in
Francisco?
California. Yeah.
You're in California. Speaking of which, while we're just taking a second break, I'm going to be hosting a meetup in New York City next week, Wednesday. I haven't announced it, but like if you want to come hang, grab a drink with me and my co-author Kevin, and just kick it and meet some other ML and data science recruiters on Wednesday night. Stay tuned for that. So that's coming up in a few days. We're just gonna like hang out, grab drinks, and just like meet the community. So yeah, I just want to put that little plug in there.
Yeah.
But I don't see where are people from. Why are people not chatting where they're from? Oh, Lagos, Nigeria. Love that.
Oh, Kashmir.
Kashmir. Wow, that is far away. Chennai. I love that. Love to see it. Anyone in New York City? No one, or at least on the East Coast, who wants to come up?
Sunnyvale.
Oh, we
Close
got
enough.
Alan, Sunnyvale. Classic. Classic South Bay. not too
I
far
think we
from.
should do some kind of like meetup here as well. Like I've been planning to do some kind of meetup here. Yesterday I was chatting with another fellow mate. She's working in Stanford, and she was mentioning about like getting a group together and like hosting a women data science event. So I'm planning to do something like that. So if folks are here, I would definitely like to send invites to the people who are in near Bay Area.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll fly in for that, Aish. I'm
Yeah. Oh
always
wow.
looking for a chance to hang out with you. And guys, Aish's boyfriend is super cool too. So low key, I
Okay.
also want to hang out with him. Sorry, Aish, but your boyfriend's really cool. Might be cooler
I
than you.
know he is.
But you know more machine learning, so that's cool too, right? Like you know more machine learning, but he's cool as a person. So you know, balances out.
I have a
I
good
love that.
choice. What
We
do I?
got some folks from St. Louis. What's up, Jessica? We got some people from the Bronx. All right, all right. Pennsylvania. Okay, cool. Atlanta. We got a lot of people from a lot of different countries.
Yeah,
NJ, New
I from
Jersey.
Dubai.
Um, yo,
Oh,
Akira, I'm making the Eventbrite for the thing, so just stay tuned. I'll post it like in like a few hours. But definitely hit me with a follow on LinkedIn, Nick Singh. Because yeah, I'm just trying to meet folks. And we did something like this in Bay Area as well, like a book launch party. But like this is like just like come kick it, grab a drink with us, and hang out, meet some recruiters. But okay, enough shameless plugging. People are like, dude, stop. Okay, let's talk about the shit
okay.
we're actually here to do.
Yeah, let's go
Um,
back. And I wanted to see if you have like any examples or any walkthrough questions that we can see and discuss with the audience.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Um, yeah, let me share my screen real quick, and I'll show you a very concrete example of what I mean by these probability and statistics questions.
Sure.
So give me one sec, because I know guys like showing you what real companies ask is the real makes things more concrete, and
Yeah.
actually that's why the book has 201 real questions. But let me show you some of the real ones here. Aish and fam, can you guys see this? um, Kamal, what's up? Yeah,
Many,
dude, I'm coming to India this winter break, so I'll announce that. But I'm gonna go hang out in Delhi, and I might come out to Bangalore this winter break. So I'm gonna try to see people. So yeah, man, I'm just chilling right now. So can you see this, Aish?
yep, it's visible. So I'm just like getting myself off the screen, so there's more screen space.
Okay, love it. So do you see that first question from Uber? Define cross validation. They're not trying to trip you up. They're just trying to see like, can you explain stuff? Like, how well do you know it? And I mean, this isn't one of those explain like I'm five questions because they didn't like explicitly ask for that. But I'm just trying to say that often this is not trying to see like, oh, cross validation is super important, but just more like, can you just talk about something? Can you explain it? How well are you as a communicator? So it's like technical, but also not technical. Do you guys see that Facebook question? That's like one of those straight up like, we have some dice, we have some cards. Like, what's the probability of this or that? Often boils down to permutations, combinations, and breaking it up into cases. So yeah, that's a little bit more tricky. That's there. And then we got that DE Shaw question. You see that one from a coin was flipped. Um, so let's
Yeah.
actually talk about that. Like that's a fun one because it like kind of explains to you like what they're looking for. So let's actually just talk about this, guys. In the audience, what do you guys think? Who thinks that this coin is biased? So if we see, this is a real question from D. Shaw, by the way. D. Shaw is where Jeff Bezos, Daddy Bezos, used to work before he quit to make that bookstore in 1996 called Amazon. So that's D. Shaw, how I know him. So what do you guys think about this? Do you guys think the coin is biased? Let's just take a second to think about this. Is the coin biased? What are we thinking? It's 550 heads out of 1,000 coin tosses. Like, um, I don't know. It could go either way. Aish, what do you think? Do you think the coin's biased?
Wait, let me come back to the screen.
Yeah.
No,
So, you know,
I mean it has to come with like a statistical significance because with 1,000 coins being tossed, um, and 550 being heads, it doesn't outsay that it's actually biased. I
sure.
mean, the probability you can see that it's 55%, but it still is not statistically significant for us to say if it is. So we
Perfect.
need to conduct some tests to figure it out.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great answer, right? So, That's why I love this question, right? Because sometimes people just jump to, yeah, it's biased, or no, it's
Yeah.
not biased, right? But you already hinted on some key words like statistical significance. We're talking about sample size, 1,000 coins, central limit
Yeah.
theorem, right? So, guys, I just want to make it clear some of these questions might be hard. You might get them right, you might get them wrong. But even just using keywords like central limit theorem, statistical significance, like we're on the right track. And that shows people you're thinking right. So I think people always ask me, like, Nick, like, yo, what if I don't know the answer? Or like, hey, like this is so hard. What do I do? If you start even just mentioning some of the keywords of how you'd approach it, you're on the right track, right? So, I think the answer sort of is like, hey, you got to do a z-score, right? And you even mentioned that, like a statistical
Yeah.
test.
Yeah.
And when you do a statistical test, I don't know if you can see that, but the z-score is 3.16. That's pretty high.
Yeah.
So there's probably like a less than 0.1% chance, right? And often in a lot of science and stuff, we reject if it's like what alpha less than 0.05, right? So like, yo, this is probably a biased coin, right?
Hmm.
And the point is, it doesn't matter whether you said it was biased or not. At least you like, you had that intuition, like, hey, like you kind of want to do this kind of z-score. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what they're looking for, right? And they're not actually expecting you in an interview to be like, oh, like here's the z-score, like I can compute it by hand, blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
just mentioning, yo, it's a Bernoulli random variable, and like,
Mhm.
hey, here's like the expectation 0.5, but
Mhm.
here's the standard deviation. Even just mentioning, hey, I think the standard deviation is going to be something like 16.
Yeah.
That's You're going to start winning points there. Does
Yeah.
that kind
Makes
of make
sense.
sense? But
Yeah.
you know
It
what
does.
doesn't win points? Just jumping into a random answer,
Yeah.
or just saying, yeah, it's biased, or no, it's not biased, and just moving on. Does that sort of make sense, guys?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was, I just want to give you guys a flavor of like what these kind of companies on Wall Street and Fang really do ask.
Mhm.
And it was a simple question in the sense like I didn't ask you some complex deep learning or anything, right? Like we're talking about Stat 101. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I just want to like convey that, like that's why this book I think is so important, is because like people think like, oh, like do I need to know deep learning or this or that, but like these questions can still be tricky even if it's like Stat 101 where it's just
Yeah.
about like computing a confidence interval. I can still trip people up. And you
Yeah.
know what, I gave the same question, Aish, at
Mhm.
Harvard. I was at a talk at Harvard 2 weeks ago, and like 90% of people are like, no, the coin seems normal, like what are you talking about? So yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? And this is Harvard computer science, so
Yeah, yeah, I
these
totally
can
get
be
that.
tricky.
So, Nick, what happens, like, like a lot of people do have this when they are being asked any question during the interview, even after doing like good amount of preparation, they might get fluttered and they might not be very confident about any kind of answer. So, what do you recommend in those kind of situations?
Yeah. I mean, yo, like, you're a human. I'm a human. Your interviewer's a human. It's okay to be like, yo, I really don't know this, but here's how I'd start. Like, that's a
Mhm.
good thing. What you want to do is you want to get some half points, right? There's a real thing of like a mindset of like, oh, this seems hard. I'm going to shut down. Nobody wants to hire someone like that. No one wants to
Mhm.
work with somebody who's just going to shut down. What you
Mhm.
want to be is like, listen, like, I don't really remember how to do this right now, but I remember I want to compute the z-score. Like I forget how to find the standard deviation for a Bernoulli random variable, but I know that this coin flipping is a Bernoulli random variable, right? So what you
Yeah.
want to do is try to give half answers and say, here's what I would want to know. Like I don't remember off the top of my head, but
Mhm.
that's what you want to do. And the biggest thing is you just don't want to shut down.
Yeah,
You
makes
want to
sense.
communicate with your interviewer and let them know like you're thinking. You don't want to just like sit there and like kind of look awkward and then they feel awkward and then it's all awkward all around and then
Yeah.
no, you don't want that.
Yeah.
So does that kind of make sense? Like
Yeah,
it's
it
okay to
does.
say what you don't know,
Yeah.
but it's also good even if you don't know everything to like
Yeah.
give a half attempt, because let's be honest, these things they're not going to ask you something crazy obscure that's like a definition like
Definition, yeah.
show me the math for L2 regularization right now. Like, nah, you can look that up. But
Yeah.
this kind of point flip question, there's not much to look up. So you just have
Yeah.
to give some of like what's your intuition, right?
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Sweet.
So, but
Um,
while we were talking about like probability statistics, right? Like that's one of the major chunks that we look at, and I've gone through your book, and it contains like a lot of different questions on both probability and stats. both in like easy level, medium, and difficult level questions in the book. So that's something I would highly recommend, because it doesn't, overwhelm you with questions. So it doesn't have like, 200 questions for probability and statistics.
Yeah.
So it's not going to overwhelm you with questions, but it gives you enough of all kinds of questions. And that sort of like develops your thinking process around it. So that's what is more important. It's not important for you to solve 10,000 questions to be well prepared for an interview. What is more important is that you're developing the right kind of thinking process. So
Exactly, and
yeah,
that's why Alan, I saw Alan in the comments is like, "Oh, I'm all about that partial credit." Like, guys,
yeah,
I'm about that partial credit too. Like, it's hard. These questions are hard. Like,
yeah.
they're hard, so it's okay. And that's why sometimes these questions they will purposely ask you a tough question
Hmm.
just to like challenge you a bit, and they're more
Yeah,
seeing your thought process. You know,
yeah,
so it's okay to go for partial credit. Maybe that's what they're expecting,
yeah,
So it
yeah,
is.
totally.
And I saw Krishna, you asked me to please pose with the book. I want to screenshot you guys. Bro, I love a good photo op. Aish, look cool. I'ma look cool. Okay. If you didn't
Yeah.
get that in that much time, then I don't know, man. Okay, let's go back to the regularly scheduled broadcast.
Yeah.
By the way, how many people we got? Oh, we got 139 people. All right. Love you
Oh
guys.
yeah.
So now what do we talk about? So we talked about prop,
Mm-hmm.
talked about statistics and how most,
Now.
whether you're a data analyst, data
Mm-hmm.
scientist, ML, you're going to be kind of responsible for these kind of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Now the next question goes with SQL.
yeah,
Yeah.
guys, SQL is so important, especially because it's one of the first things that are asked often with like a online screen or like a take home.
Mhm.
Like it's not even sometimes not even a human who's going to ask you about SQL,
Yeah.
and it's so important. I think some people, I think even Aish, you had mentioned this, like, oh, but
Yeah.
I use Dippler and R all day, or I use
Yeah.
pandas and Python all day.
Python all day. Yeah.
Do I need to actually know SQL? Like, I
Yeah.
don't use SQL today. Guys, I hate to
So
be,
before you jump into
yeah,
into
yeah,
that, I want to really standardize this. Is it SQL or SQL? Because I've been calling it SQL all my life, and I hear people saying SQL, and I'm always confused that which term should I be using.
yeah. I think I call it SQL, and that's what I've heard of it here in the US, but it might be, you know,
Yeah.
guys,
I
I don't want to go too off
I
tangent,
don't
but
know.
like, even the word data is pronounced different. Some people say data. Oh, I'm a data
Oh
scientist versus
yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
data scientist,
Data
right? Like
scientist.
it's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
So, oh shit, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Okay, cool. But yeah, so guys, SQL is really important to know. And as I was mentioning, even if you don't use SQL, I hate to break it to you, some of these companies in their opening rounds are going to expect you to do SQL, even if you don't do it day to day. So I know it's stupid, but that's the system. So I'm not here to change the system. I'm here to just let you know what happens. Like they're gonna ask you about SQL even if you don't use it. So like get good at SQL. Practice. You can practice in the book. We have like 30 questions. You can also practice on HackerRank. Another fun thing is you pull your own data from Kaggle, load it up in
Mhm.
a SQL environment, and just do some exploratory data analysis. Do some like joins, some group bys, some CTE, some window functions, some basic stuff. So um yeah, that's sequel. I think Aish, you were wondering, uh,
Yeah.
like about brain teaser or something. What was
Yeah.
it?
So, do you have any questions with you for sequel, which we can maybe just
Oh
quickly?
yeah, I can show that. Yeah, let me
Okay.
show you guys a real one. That makes a lot more sense. So let me
Yeah,
just hit share screen again of
that'll
like
be
what
helpful.
what do you need to know for sequel.
Okay. I'm gonna share your screen again. Let me know when you're ready.
Alrighty, here we are.
Okay. Great. The screen is visible.
Sweet. So as I mentioned, or actually I didn't mention this, but something else people also ask me is like, bro, do you need to know these SQL brain teasers? I think Leak Code has a lot more of these brain teasers. You actually
Mm-hmm.
don't, guys. They're not asking
Yeah.
some crazy stuff. Another thing is like, what flavor do you interview in? Usually they're pretty chill. They're not going to be like, yo, we need Postgres, but you're using SQL Server syntax. It's not usually that stressful. What they're just looking for is that you kind of know what you're doing. So that's why often, like, yeah, some companies might ask you to do some like date time or string manipulation,
Mm-hmm.
but generally a lot of the bigger companies, they know that like it's really easy to forget
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
string functions in this. So what they're going to test you on is the core concepts.
Yeah.
joins, group bys,
Yeah.
partitions,
Yeah.
window functions, so yeah, here's like a real question that you could get. So this one's coming from Twitter. It's
Mhm.
problem 6 in our book in chapter 8. So we have a whole SQL chapter. So as you can see, like this seems like a really realistic query, and I think that's the thing that people miss out is like, bro, your SQL interviews oftentimes are quite realistic. They're not trying to trick you. I think
Yeah.
people are so used to those leak code questions, which are like actually like reverse a linked list. It's
Yeah.
like, bro, I don't even use linked list. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
like if you're a real software engineer, data engineer, when are you even using a linked list data
Yeah.
structure managing pointers, right?
Yeah.
You use array list or list, like who's doing that? So in that sense, SQL interviews tend not to be like that. SQL interviews try to be practical and they're not trying to trip you up. So this is like an example answer
Yeah.
of that kind of question. It's just like there's a subquery, there's a group by, a simple where condition, nothing crazy with string date time formatting.
Mhm.
Oh cool, Calvin. Oh yeah, I saw you. Yeah, what's up, Calvin? Calvin was like grinding out on some SQL questions last week and he tagged me on LinkedIn. So if any of you guys have the book or you just want to pose with the book or share that you're reading the book, like I'll always
Mhm.
interact with that. So yeah, I just love seeing that. It makes my day. So what's up, Calvin?
Can I
Thank
post one too?
Yeah, of course. What do you mean? You have the book. You read at it. Yeah, of course you should post it. So hopefully this gives you a sense of what they ask for SQL. And again, pretty much you're gonna need to know this, especially if you're a data analyst or data scientist. Maybe a little bit less for ML or research scientist roles, but
Yeah.
like, guys, this is such a crucial first screen. Like, do not sleep on your SQL.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Another thing, Nick, I think Zach was also mentioning this in one of his posts earlier, that it's a misconception that, like people are all for doing lead code questions, which don't really have any context behind it. Versus when I was reading your book, all your questions were having a context, right? For example, Twitter. So Twitter is not going to ask you to, hey, like just randomly join two different tables in like a very fancy format. They're going to give you a context. They're going to give you a use case. They're going to say that, hey, let's say that we have a data set which talks about Twitter users, or if it's Facebook, it's going to say that, hey, like let's say we have a Facebook data set which has like click through rates and XYZ. So it's going to be very specific for that team, or like especially for that company, right? So
Yeah.
that is something which I felt was really important. And don't just blindly go for like SQL questions. It's more important that you understand the context of the question and that it relates to the business directly.
Absolutely. And we talk about that in our book as well. Like SQL often might be like a gateway to a bigger question. They might ask you like, hey, how would you find the click-through rate of something like that? And then
Yeah.
it's up to you to figure out like, what is even click-through rate defined as? Or like,
Yeah.
what's retention really look like here? Do you want month over month retention, year over year retention? Like sometimes they'll leave it purposely vague. That's definitely
Mhm.
like a next level question though. So we cover
Yeah.
that in our book a little bit. But yeah, definitely sometimes companies will ask a little bit more open-ended of a SQL
Yeah.
question where
Mhm.
the skill is to even know what to even query. Like what does the end result look like before you even query it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing people often ask me about is coding, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
some of these companies will ask for coding questions. Guys, we have a coding chapter in our book. Lead code is great to practice. And there's a meme, especially in the software engineering community of like grind lead code.
Mhm.
I wish there was some better way I could tell you than grinding it out, but it is what it is. Like sometimes you really just got to grind it out. Now I think for data science roles, data analyst roles, they're not going to really ask for that as much. They're going to ask more data manipulation stuff with like pandas or Dippler.
Yeah.
Um, I should maybe mute yourself for a second.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's
yeah. It's your
a
boyfriend.
microwave. Yes, he's heating up his coffee.
Okay, no, it's all good. I'm in New York, guys, so it's quite loud out here too. I don't know if it's been, anyways. So what I was just saying is I wish there was a better way than just practice, but like honestly, for SQL and coding, it's just about practice, which is why those chapters are just like a whole bunch of problems, and like that's all I can really say. I don't have any kind of like next level insight into that. And I worked at Google, I worked at Facebook, and like I've talked to my other peers about it. Like nobody has any kind of like insight. Just like do a bunch of practice. You know, it is what it is. But yeah, especially for like an ML engineer or data engineer, you got to be doing that stuff. Data analyst, definitely, it's not you're not really even expected to know your data structures for that. But yeah. Cool. So yeah. Anyone have any questions real quick? Let me just make sure we got questions before I issue. Um, People are asking, how do you
I
learn
noticed it.
SQL? There's so many things online, and I post about it all the time. SQL Bolt's good. Mode analytics SQL tutorials are good. My book is good, I would like to say. um,
I would second that.
yeah. Any other questions, guys, about
Um,
prob, stat, SQL coding so far? What we've covered for this technical interview?
yeah, I think like one of the other things that I would want like your thoughts on, and something that might be really helpful for people, is understanding what kind of machine learning questions could be asked. So one of the
Oh
things that
yeah.
you mentioned is with projects, right? Like they'll try to understand what technology you use for the project, what approach you use for the project. But apart from that, what is the kind of machine learning questions that's generally asked in these interviews?
Yeah, that's a great question. People usually freak out. They're like, yo, I want to be a data scientist, but my linear algebra is not so good. And then I'm like confused about machine learning. So, guys, like knowing your classic techniques like regression, decision trees, SVM, that's great.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're not going to be, most jobs are not going to hit you up with neural network questions. They're not going to ask you about CNNs and RNNs. Why?
Hmm.
Because practically most jobs are not taking those techniques into production. Like you need to have a lot of data and a lot of maturity to be
Hmm.
applying these to be throwing neural networks at problems. So for a vast majority of roles, you're not going to be asked that. Now, of course, if you're applying to be a research scientist or a
Hmm.
machine learning engineer at a big company that actually has a lot of data and a lot of technical maturity, yeah, you might be asked a little bit about neural networks, but often what companies, even those companies that do a lot of stuff with neural networks, they're going to try to test your foundational stuff because it's
Yeah.
okay if you haven't worked with the latest and greatest in convolutional neural nets, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you better know your linear regression and what are the four assumptions behind linear regression, and like how do you validate the assumptions behind linear regression, how do you make sure like things are distributed correctly. um, those are like way more realistic of what companies ask for. And I think partly the reason this exists is because this field is evolving so fast and there's so many things happening. They're not expecting you to know, be like, tell me about long short LSTMs. Like
Yeah.
they're not asking about that because they're not even using LSTMs. Most of the time they're using SVM or decision trees. So they'll just say, hey, tell me about boosting. Have you ever heard of XGBoost? Like, do you know the
Yeah.
conceptually what boosting is? Like that's way
Yeah.
more realistic for
Yeah.
most of these roles.
Yeah.
So
I think
hopefully,
LSTMs and things are probably very specific to teams who are only, working on, say, time series modeling or like more research oriented. And yesterday I was just speaking to one of my mentees, and I was telling her the same thing, that, yes, it is important for you to know like deep learning techniques or like algorithms, but that's not something that you might be using on a day-to-day basis when you are a data scientist, especially like an applied data scientist, because when working with companies, they're probably not going to be using such advanced technologies in production. So that does take a long time for approvals or like governance things to come through. So yeah, as long as you should know about it, but that's not something that they want you to have like a master on.
yeah. And I think that should give people confidence.
Yeah,
Like it's not, like you can have a very successful career in data science, data analytics, even ML without like knowing about the latest and greatest research study.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's
Yeah,
totally okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, cool.
Another
So I think,
question, like
mhm.
Nick, I was just thinking about this, right? So one of the other things that I have especially experienced, like while working with some of the mentees, that preparing for machine learning interviews, right? Like that section is also very subjective to the team or the company that you're interviewing for. For example, like if you're like interviewing in a Siri team, you definitely should be knowing a lot more NLP than interviewing for, like, let's say, a computer vision team, right? So that's expertise of you in like a particular domain has depends on like which company or like which team specifically you're interviewing for. Like that's not something which is generic. What's generic is the general machine learning things that you mentioned about, like linear regression or logistic regression, or what's the difference between boosting and bagging, and uh, how do you work with them, etc.
Yeah, like what's k-fold validation, like what's
Yeah,
what's cross validation, like those are way more realistic.
yeah,
But yeah, but again, I think someone wrote in the comments like you'd be surprised how many people can't really talk through what are the assumptions behind linear regression.
yeah,
They just know lm dot fit. Oh,
yeah,
just throw it
yeah, yeah,
magically, and you always just
yeah,
it doesn't matter what you have, just throw it on there. It's like
yeah. That's
no,
what I
no.
remember. Like a lot of people ask me that, hey, is probability and statistics so important for you to be a data scientist or like, a machine learning engineer? And that's where I remember like we had this professor at Columbia, and she was like one of the best professors I've had, and she taught us things which were not doesn't look as fancy as machine learning, but the things which she mentioned to us in those classes were really really important, and that's something which I'll never ever forget. Like just for a simple model like linear regression, right? She actually drew things on the board saying that, hey, like the basic assumption behind linear regression is that the data is following a linear pattern. So after fitting a model on top of it, you're supposed to be drawing the the error rates for each and every data point and seeing if that's randomly distributed or not. So those were some of the things which is really important. So if you think that probability and statistics is not a foundational thing, like please go back and brush up on your foundations.
Yeah. No, I love that. If you like that too, hit him with the clap emoji. All right. I'm gonna hit you with the clap emoji. I mean, there's like 140 of us here, and there's
Yeah,
only like 12 claps. Like, what are you guys doing? I don't like lurkers, man. This is not Reddit. Like, this is like a live thing. Like, I see you all in the comments. Like, we're having a discussion. I'm like looking at that stuff. So if you're here, come interact with us. Drop us something in the comments. Say like, yo, this is making sense, or like, yo, this is not making sense. Let's go back to that. Like, guys, this is live. This is not YouTube.
yeah,
This is fucking live, guys. Can I say that on LinkedIn? Well, I just did. Okay, whatever.
yeah. So I really like this question that this person has asked, and I've had this question a lot. So Divyanshu is asking that he's doing his master's, but he hears that data science roles in most of the FANG companies requires a PhD. So do you
Yeah,
have?
that's not true.
Yeah,
That's not true.
yeah,
I think research scientist does
yeah,
need that, but for a lot of data science, no, they don't, because a lot of it's like product data science, where it's like
yeah,
more about taking data, exploring the data, and it's not about like building some like latest and greatest machine learning model. It's about more just using data to answer questions. So actually,
mhm,
like a lot of places, you can get by with a master's, even a bachelor's degree. Now, of course, it's not like the bachelor's degree has to be from like a pretty good university, to be honest. But no, like even a master's degree in business analytics, there's tons of people at FANG
yeah,
like
yeah,
that. You don't need a PhD in this field. It
yeah.
helps and might help you with immigration. It might help you with other things, but no, there's so much space in data analytics, data science, and ML for people with master's or even bachelor's degrees. Yeah.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, I think we talked about, I just said product analytics,
Yeah,
right? Um, we talked about ML, we talked about stat prob, SQL coding.
yeah,
Product interviews is something that a
yeah,
lot of people just don't know about, but it's
yeah.
super
Super
important,
important. Yeah,
especially for a company like Facebook, you know? So me and my co-author Kevin, oh yeah, I should have mentioned Kevin's my co-author. If you're in New York City, you can come hang out with us next Wednesday and meet him. He's a little shy, so you haven't seen too much on him on LinkedIn. You've been seeing me, you've been seeing Aish, but you have not seen this guy. So he's so smart.
I
He
wish
was,
I could just pull up a picture of him. That's like
yeah,
those
yeah,
stairs and on the sides.
guys. I'm literally his fan club. Like I was like, hey Kevin, can you write this book, and can I just like try to help you? Like Kevin's the brains behind the book. I'm just some loud mouth who hangs out and tries to pretend I'm cool. But no, guys, yeah, he has a bachelor's in stat and CS, and then he out of undergrad was a data scientist at Facebook as a product data scientist. And this is a role that Facebook really hires a ton for, but also you can find this role at Amazon and Google, Snap. A lot of these product oriented companies will have a role called product data scientist. And this role is not about building the latest and greatest machine learning model. This is about writing SQL queries, doing really good visualizations and exploration of the existing data, and helping inform the roadmap, the product roadmap, working with the
Yeah,
PMs and engineering managers to figure out what the hell do we actually build. Now, if you want this kind of role, you can't just be really, really good at statistics or machine learning. You have to have some business sense. You got to
Yeah.
have some product savvy. You got to be good at working with others. And that's what these interviews test. It's called the product data science interview. And it's almost like always asked at Facebook. And most of the Facebook data science roles are interviewing for that position, product data science. So this is where they'll ask you something about like an actual Facebook product, and they'll ask you to like talk about what would be some success metrics for the job, or like, hey, like how would you improve this product? Like straight up, like that doesn't even have to do with data science. They'll be like, yo, how do you think about this product? Like, what do you think we could do to improve it? Why? Because again, your chief role as a product data scientist or working in product analytics is to make the company more money and build better products. So how about this? Why don't we make it more concrete, and let's like run through a real product interview question. And guys, I want you guys to like also like respond in the comments, like follow along with this. um
Yeah.
yeah, I see Suresh is asking like palindrome, like those kind of like leak code type coding questions. Yeah, people will ask it. It's not great. I don't think it's very relevant, but it is what it is. And people will ask those kind of leak code easy questions about string manipulation or manipulating arrays and lists. So I think you should definitely practice that. Yeah, I don't think it's crazy relevant for the job, but it is what's asked. So it is what it is. And then let me just get another question. Yeah, Athir is saying, yeah, product sense often lends into case studies, which are like more open-ended questions, again, similar to product questions. And that's also really a common type of question that's asked. So we'll talk about that soon. Cool. Any other questions, or shall we jump into what
Let me
product?
actually put the question on the screen. That might be helpful. I don't know.
Oh yeah, let's
Do you
totally
want to
do that.
try? So Ajay is asking that he feels very confident with probability machine learning and statistics, but not good with data structures and algorithms. So how important are those for cracking FANG companies?
They're important.
Yeah.
They're important. They're important. Now, you may not need to know graph theory and be able to do BFS and DFS, but you should definitely be handy at stuff working with strings or arrays or simple data structures like stack,
Mhm.
queue, and array.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to know about balanced trees or graphs or I don't know, try data structures. Like you definitely don't need those. Or like dynamic
Yeah.
program is not expected, because straight up, even in like Sui, real
Yeah.
life Sui, you're not
Yeah.
even using dynamic programming most of the time, to be honest. So yeah, can you guys see the screen of
Yeah.
what these
Now we
open-ended?
can.
So guys, so pretend you have a question like, hey, like this is an example of like an open-ended case study question. So this is a little different than product sense, but they kind of get bundled together. So as I mentioned, product sense is like, hey, how do you improve the product, or what like metrics would you use for success? A lot of companies, even if they're not product oriented, they're just like any role, they'll ask you just like a general open-ended case question like, hey, how would you just do this? And the strategy to answer these open-ended case questions is very similar to the strategy to answer open-ended product questions, because often both are looking at some technical experience, but also business and product sense and domain knowledge, and just like your own like intuition around like what's the company doing, right? So I think the tactic for this, the tactic for this is you got to clarify like what is the question being asked. And Aish, I think we've talked about this before, right? Like often on purpose, these questions are very open ended, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And man, clarifying it, they want you to ask more
Yeah.
intelligent questions to like narrow
Yeah.
down the scope. Guys, you only have 20 minutes, 30 minutes to answer this question. Obviously, in 20 minutes, they're not asking you to build the whole search pricing
Yeah.
algorithm. What
Yeah.
they're really trying to see is like, what are you curious about? Or like, what are you trying to even ask? And a big solution for all this is to align to the product and business goal. Like, why is Uber even trying to build this? Mention the words supply and demand.
Yeah.
Mention optimizing revenue. Mention, hey, we want to improve driver supply
Yeah.
and regulate consumer demand. Mention a metric like average wait time or ride NPS. How happy were you with the Uber experience? Like these are the kind of things that once you start thinking about what's the goal of search pricing for Uber, what's the goal of this product and the business goal, you start giving good answers. Lastly, you got to mention some trade-offs. Guys, there's no one right answer. They're not looking for, hey, this was the right answer, this was the wrong answer. It's all about like, how can you think about this and all the different trade-offs you have to make? What things are you cognizant about, right? So let's talk about this for a second. If you're at Uber, what are some trade-offs? Like, does anyone want to put in some trade-offs? Like, let's say we build a search pricing algorithm and it works well. What can go wrong? Or like, what are some things we'd want to watch out for? I want to just open it up actually. So your Uber's, so the question is Uber search pricing algorithm. Hey, Aisha, are you there?
Yes, I am there. I thought I put you in spotlight for a while.
Oh, okay. I was like, did you disappear? And I got scared. Like,
No, I was under the screen while you were sharing the screen.
cool. So guys, here's the question for you. Like, this is interactive. I want you guys to comment the answer, please. It's okay if you don't have the exact answer, but like, I just want to put some stuff on the board. Your Uber, you build a search pricing algorithm. What are some of the metrics you like watch out for? Like what are some of the important metrics like you want to track? Because forget about even building the algorithm or what like kind of neural network you'd use or like what kind of data you train on. Like, what are the things that you'd even want to watch out for? Like, let's pretend we were doing good. Our algorithm was doing good. Like, what would you even look for?
Yeah.
Aish, do you want to start? Do you want to mention like one kind of metric that would make sense to watch out?
So things like what you're trying to do is like you're trying to match people with their drivers as soon as possible. You're trying to do it while optimizing the amount of time the driver reaches to the passenger. You're trying to optimize on the price that they're getting. That'll also depend on like how far the driver was and how long does it take to come to the passenger, etc. So those are probably like some of the business metric, right? For them, they want to like increase their revenue, and that's the core metric that they're looking for. That how do we increase our revenue, how do we get the best price for travel, and how do we get the most users on our platform.
Yeah, Aish, you've been practicing. Someone's been acing the data science theory. That was amazing, guys. I want to hear for somebody else, or maybe I don't know. Maybe everyone's feeling a little shy right now. I don't know what it is. Let me refresh it just to see, and then we'll break down what Aish said. Otherwise, Aish will go with what you said because
Okay, cool.
you crushed it.
Do I get a prize for it?
Yeah.
Do I get a trophy?
Your prize is that you get to hang out with me sometime in the future.
Oh wow, I'll take that.
I'm the prize, yeah. No, I'm fun. Okay, guardrail metrics. What's up, Rishabh? Good. Guardrail metrics would be wait time, right? Like we want to make sure that they're okay. So maybe guardrail. I guess when I think of guardrail metrics, I'm thinking about something that like we really want to watch out for. I think a primary metric would be wait time. Like we're trying to optimize and like reduce wait time on average per person. We're also trying to look at like drivers per geographic area, right? Because if our algorithm is working well, we're able to bring out drivers to meet the
Yeah.
available riders. And I guess how do you even know that it's working out well? It's about the average wait time, right?
Yeah.
Yes, a guardrail might be customer churn, y'all. Surge pricing, like yeah, like maybe people are like, yo, fuck Uber, like I want to use Lyft, like straight up. I mean, like, dude, surge pricing is annoying. So that's where the guardrails start coming up.
Yep.
Demand based on time of the day. We definitely use that. Fuel prices, that's an interesting one. I'm sure that definitely like changes up the accounting for like how if
Not
someone is
if you
5
go
minutes,
EV.
if someone's 5 minutes away and 5 miles away, the cost of fuel actually tells you, hey, is 5 miles like really far or really close? Because if fuel is really expensive, that's like not great, and that affects things.
Can I pitch in and advocate for EV cars? Then you don't have to care about fuel prices.
Oh yeah,
Go
I
EV.
was a big Tesla fan, a big Elon Musk fan, because yeah, I'm a shareholder of Tesla, and Elon Musk, every time he makes a meme,
Yeah.
Tesla stock goes up, and he makes me a little bit more money. So I don't have a Tesla, I actually don't even have a car, but I'm a big fan of Tesla as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so yeah, exactly. You want to increase driver availability, customer acceptance and reject. That's huge. Customer accepts and rejects, because that's a big thing in search pricing.
Yeah.
It's like you open the app and you're like, yo, fuck this, like I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to take the bus, I'm going to take a metro, I'm going to crash with my buddy overnight. Those are real things.
Yeah.
Another guardrail metric might be like customer support tickets.
Yeah.
Guys, this is LinkedIn Live, so I can be honest with you guys. Like, guys, Kevin and I, we used to live in Palo Alto, and we go party in San Francisco. So Palo Alto is Silicon Valley. San Francisco is a good like 30 miles away.
Yeah.
Yo, we got a little lit one time, and we accidentally bought like a $200 Uber because it was surge pricing.
Yeah.
And we were a little drunk and we weren't paying attention, and we called the Uber and we paid money out our ass, and then the next morning we were like felt like so stupid, you
Yeah.
know. And like maybe Uber should have just been like, yo, we're not going to give you a ride, like it's $200, like what are you doing, right? And maybe they should have, but I'm just trying to say, like, we can't fault Uber, but like we're also dumb consumers, and we're like, dude, Uber, like how did we spend $200 last night? Like what kind of product is this? So, you know, like there's all kinds of interesting metrics that you have to think about. Yeah, Alan's like lamowing because he lives in Sunnyvale. He knows about the plight to go from South Bay to New York, you know, to SF, and then after a night of partying, you're just not even thinking right. But anyways, so these are all the different metrics you use for search pricing. So I'm glad we're warmed up. I'm loving that people are coming with actual answers. Like I love that we're here. Because maybe it's like the 1 minute delay. So let's just try to practice one more question, because these are really realistic questions that you'll be asked, and like this is for most roles, because at the end of the day, they want to know that you're hiring like a problem solver, right? So
Exactly.
I'll ask you to like reverse a linked list, and I'll ask you some like statistics question and this and that, but like let's just riff on a product idea.
Yeah.
And I guess one big advice I have for everyone listening to answer these kind of questions is, guys, there's no right or wrong answers. Mention trade-offs. Think about the business, and like think as if you're their coworker. Does that make sense? Like, it's a conversational interview. They're not just trying to grill you. They're trying to like work with you. So you should mentally think, I already work at this company, and I'm working on Uber search pricing, and I work at Uber. What do I care about? And these are my coworkers. That's like the mindset you want to have when you're approaching these kind of questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because that's what they want to know, because that's actually why they're asking a question. Almost always, Facebook's going to ask a question about Facebook. Uber's going to ask a question about Uber. And guys, can I let you in on a little hack? I talk about it in the book, but we got 142 people rocking with us. I'll let you know the hack. This is the kind of shit I'd love to talk about, because like it's stupid that it works, but if it works, it works. Guys, knowing and researching the product before you interview is so huge. Okay? Because at some level, this is just testing, like, do you even understand Uber as a company? Like, have you used the app? Do you understand Facebook as a company? Have you used their products? Like, do you actually understand like what users think about and do? So one of the best ways to level up is to actually use the product, use the service. Like, really know before your interview, because you all can almost guarantee Uber's going to ask you a question about Uber, and you can kind of cheat by having done your research. So I'll give you an example of cheating. Uber is a public company. You can read their reports. You can know what metrics they're already tracking, because they're a publicly traded company. They already have the reports in their quarterly earnings. Go read that. They're giving it to you for free, so that when they hit you with that Uber product sense question, oh, what metrics do you track for? You already have the answers.
Yeah.
And I hate that works, right? Because it should be an even playing field, and it shouldn't have, you know, anyone should be like a smart person should be able to answer it. But honestly, guys, let's tilt the playing field in your favor. Go do your research for the product. Go do your homework and think about these metrics beforehand, because it's almost always going to come up, and it's almost always going to make you shine. And guess what? You're competing against like people, like internal candidates who already work there, and you're competing against like interns who are looking for a return offer. So they already have access to these kind of metrics, and like think in an Uber way, or in a Facebook way, or an Amazon way. So if you want to beat them, you have to do a lot of research. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Let me see this. Jessica's sister got an Uber, someone from Nevada to Arizona. Yeah, it's wild out here. You can do some crazy stuff, and like it's just an app. You click one button, and suddenly it's like, dude, how did I spend $300 last night? You know? And coworker idea is huge. Think of these people as your coworker, and you're like collaboratively solving a question together. And that's why it goes back to my first advice: clarify the problem.
Yeah.
Because they're not trying to like gotcha. You know, they're just trying to like, you know, they're trying to work with you on the problem. So you're allowed to ask questions back. So that's right, Bharat. Let's see. Rishabh with that smart data source. Yeah, you could look at the Uber competitors' prices too. You better believe Uber is tracking Lyft pricing like in all the
Yeah.
geos all the time per like 10 minutes. And that's probably against Lyft's term of service. Like you can't like scrape that stuff, but like I'm almost certain Uber is doing that. No disrespect to Uber. I bet Lyft is doing that to Uber too. And if either those companies are listening to me, don't sue me. I'm sure you guys abide by all rules and regulations all the time, just like every other company, because no company's ever done anything crazy to grow. Right, Aish? No company's ever done anything
Yeah.
crazy. Never heard of that. Never heard of that. Cool. Um, Someone is asking, what are your next steps in making the book more better? Guys, is the book not good enough? No, just kidding. We're making the book better. We're trying to make probability and statistics much more easier to understand because we didn't calibrate it correctly, and that so many people have been like years since they took their college level prob and stack course, or
Yeah.
maybe they're software engineers who just don't even have a background in that stuff. So we got to make it a little easier and like a little bit more thorough as an explanation. And then we have a few typos to fix,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna try to put more images and like be more like example driven and visual driven in our
Yeah.
explanation, not just like throw you with some more math. So we're definitely going to improve the book.
Nick,
Yeah,
another thing, like when you were talking about the product sense, right? So one of the things you mentioned is like work with the interviewer, and I wanted to like just go a little deeper into that because when you're presented with a question from like with respect to a product sense, right? A lot of the times the interviewer has an answer for that question in his head, so they are like sort of trying to see if you reach that point, and that's where it's really important that you keep asking them questions that, hey, like these are the two approaches, like one is more like a machine learning approach, the other is more of a data driven like analytics approach, or the third is like more of a business approach. So which one would you want me to go through? And like have that back and forth conversation with them, because that's the only way that you can read their mind on what
yeah,
answer do they already have in their head. So
guys, it is so true. It is so true what Aisha's saying. Like it's like a tango. It takes two to
yeah,
tango. Like they want you to answer something, but they're not
yeah,
going to say like, let's go down this way. So you have to
yeah,
kind of keep being conversational and being like, does this sound right? Or like, I think about trade-offs. Or do you want me to talk more about the algorithm itself for search
yeah,
pricing? And
yeah,
they'll be like, oh no, you've done a good job on the algorithm. Like, let's talk about trade-offs, or let's talk about
yeah,
like guardrail metrics,
yeah,
right? That's like a very real thing. So it's conversational. Someone asked like, how do you practice these things? Honestly, you practice with a friend. You practice by reading our book because we have like 19 product sense questions plus like 10 really big case studies. How else do you practice? Honestly, you just like you build this kind of product and business acumen. How do you do it? By actually not reading machine learning research, but reading about the companies themselves and seeing like, like what's Uber struggling with right now? Let's go read the news reports. Let's go look at their earnings report. Let's like go look on Quora. Or let's see what people are talking about in the App Store. Like, what are people actually concerned with? What are teams hiring for? Often in the job description, they'll say, hey, as part of the Uber Eats team, you're going to help us reach profitability. Or, hey, as part of the Uber Eats team, you're going to help us partner with 10,000 more restaurants this
yeah,
quarter. Like that's how you can figure out what are these companies thinking about. And then, yeah. And like, you just kind of can do it in your own head. Cause let's be honest, like everything around you is a product or a business.
yeah,
So it's up to you to like really think critically. Like what is LinkedIn even optimizing for with LinkedIn Live?
yeah,
Likes, engagements, viewer time, ads seen. Like there's so many things. So just like think about things more critically around you. It's not necessarily like some kind of thing like, oh, you need a really good interviewer to practice with. And unless I have this like fang interviewer, like my friend there, I can't improve. Nah, you can improve every day all around you by reading more, thinking about products more critically. Yeah. And checking out the book, of course, because we give you more tips on how to develop this business sense. Um, Jessica, what's up? Yeah, I think I might want to make a video course, Jessica, about like the book. Just like put things to more life. So definitely keep an eye on that. Yeah, Birth, researching the product. Dude, Birth points it out so nicely. He says, research the product. It sounds obvious, but it can't be stated enough.
enough, yeah,
Y'all,
totally.
you guys are smarter than me. You guys know machine learning, you guys know deep learning, yet you all are stupid as hell when it comes to researching the company. Guys, I've had at Facebook, I've had people just straight up tell me, I don't use Facebook.
Yeah.
What do I say? Like, you can reverse the linked list, and that's great. I'm gonna give you marks for that. But like, what do you want me to do with that? Like, how do I feel excited about you as a candidate? Like, why would
Yeah.
you tell me that? They're
Yeah.
just like, you know what? I don't really use Facebook. Ha ha ha. And like, why are you applying for a Facebook product role? Like, what are you doing? You
Yeah.
know? So, and you guys might think like, oh, I would never say that at Facebook, but like, dude, it's so crazy that people say that, and it like just blows my mind. Like, I've had multiple smart people be like, oh, sorry, I don't use Uber, I use Lyft. Then why are you interviewing at Uber? What are you
Yeah.
doing? Right? And here's something else. Here's something else crazy. Now, let me give you a next level tip that's going to bring you one step higher, right? Because you might think this is obvious, right? Guys, Uber has two apps, Uber for consumers and Uber for drivers.
Mhm.
Actually, Uber has three apps. They also have the Uber Eats app.
Yeah.
What's stopping you from downloading the Uber driver app, signing up for a driver this weekend? Now, if you're just applying for a random Uber position, you don't need to do that. But if you're joining, like they have the JD, the job description will tell you, hey, you're joining, you're joining the Uber driver experience team or the
Yeah.
driver supply team. You can literally sign up for the Uber and like drive even a trip. Sure, it might help you in interviews, but forget the interviews for a second. Like, it's going to help you as a candidate, like connect with your interviewers and like show that you actually give a damn about your product and like you take your craft seriously. There's so much of your craft of being data scientist, data analyst, machine learning is also knowing the domain, knowing the product, knowing the people, like thinking about things at a level that's deeper than, oh yeah, here's the code or here's the number I'm like optimizing. It's like way more than that. So I'm just trying to say, like, guys, at Uber, for example, you could download the thing. At smaller companies, you could go sign up for their free trial, even if it's something you wouldn't have normally used. If they have a free trial, go sign up for that, or like go look around. Um, it really makes you stand out. And almost every company you can try out, even if it's like a $10,000 a month product or service, I'm sure there's a free trial or there's like a free webinar. There's something you could do to learn the product more than most candidates. Um, Cool. So yeah, sorry, I had to like riff on that. Let me just look at the questions for a second.
Yep.
Hopefully that gets the point across because I'm telling you guys, they want to hire people who care. At the end of the day, this is
Yeah.
still about the technical stuff. And like, bro, if you don't know your SQL, you're not
Yeah.
gonna get the thing. But like, there's 5 candidates who all know SQL. One person like actually knows something about ride sharing or like
Yeah.
cares. They're gonna get the job.
And it's also about like you being passionate about a product, right? Like, how can you possibly work for a company on a product if you're just not passionate about it? Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where you got to like show that stuff in every interview. And like, especially guys, if you're an underdog, if you have a PhD, it's fine. Or if you have 10 years experience, fine. We'll hire you on your experience. But if you're like a new grad, you're someone who doesn't have much data science experience, but you actually show that you care about the problem space, that you care about the company, you care about the role, and you're willing to put in work that others aren't.
Yeah.
That's how you stand out against people who have more experience.
Yeah.
It's by doing these kind of things, which are free,
Yeah.
downloading a driver app for
Totally.
Uber, or like looking at Lyft and like comparing Uber's app to Lyft
Yeah.
and thinking critically about that. That's
Mhm.
that's how you show off.
Yep. Totally. Totally. So, let me see. Like, once people are like preparing for like the technical rounds, and then we have covered the product science. We covered behavioral in the last session. So we'll be putting those links in the description below. Nick, would it be fine if you can share the deck that you just showed us?
Yeah, absolutely. Give me a second. I'll share it soon.
Okay.
I have to just edit one or two things,
Mhm.
remove some slides because it's a work in progress. But yeah, I'll share that
Okay.
soon.
Great.
Um, Hit me up with a follow, you guys, on LinkedIn. Send me a message if you get the book. Check out the book on Amazon. We also, if you're not in a place with, oh, did she just leave?
No, I'm
Oh,
just
sorry.
letting people see the
Oh,
book.
okay. It looks like you leave. Okay, no, that's cool. So check out the book on Amazon. If you're in New York City, come hang out with us on this Wednesday. if you are in a school or club and you want us to come talk and do a Zoom event or visit in person, write me an email, write me a LinkedIn message. What else? I have a free 9-day crash course. Guys, if you're not in a country where the book's out yet, on my website, acethedataScienceInterview.com, we have a free 9-day crash course where we like talk about some of these tips. And we're working to get it out internationally in about a month. But yeah, Bharat asked, when is the book in India? I'm trying to make it happen in the next month, month and a half. Trust me, it's really annoying. I want to make it out sooner, but we're dealing with some weird stuff. But yeah, guys, just hit me up with some last questions. Anything else? Otherwise, I will bid you guys a happy weekend. And thanks for rocking with us. Honestly, like I loved, like it took a second, but you guys gave some really good Uber metrics, and we had fun. I had fun. So,
Great. Thanks a lot, Nick.
and don't
Thank
tell
you,
people that I
everyone.
get drunk with Kevin and we spent $300 on an Uber. Like that, keep that between us small 150 people. I don't need people to know
Okay.
about that.
Perfect. Great. Thanks a lot, Nick. Like, this was really helpful. So, I'm going to be sharing your handle, your book. And if you can share the slides with me later, I'll add that to the description of the video, which is going to go on YouTube. So, yeah, you can wait for that. And like people who have not been able to attend this live can watch this later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Cool,
Great.
guys.